What is good, guys? My name is PotatoPleb, and welcome back to another chess opening video. And this time, I'm going to be creating the most ambitious series on my channel yet. It's going to be a 9-episode series uploaded every week, and it's going to cover A to Z's of the Vienna Gambit. So it's gonna first cover. It's gonna be broken down into 3 different parts. The first part is going to be the opening part. So there will be 3 episodes about the opening of the Vienna game. The second part will be the middle game, and the third part will be the miscellaneous, like the end game, how to deal with it with a different color and all that stuff. So in the case of the opening part of this video, or the series, I'll be uploading 3 different videos. The first episode, the one that you're watching, will cover the Vienna Gambit. So basically, I'll be introducing the series, and after that, will cover the Vienna Gambit, the opening itself. If you want to skip right to that, just check the timeline down below. And the second episode of the series, which is going to be uploaded next week, is going to be about Vienna Gambit declined and Anderson defense. 2 very important variations in the Vienna game. And the third variation that I'm going to cover the week after that is going to be the Vienna game, aka Bishop opening Vienna game hybrid. And that will be the part 1 of this series. And the part 2 of this series will be the middle game. So the first episode of part 2 will be about the middle game and example games within the Vienna Gambit. And the second episode of the part 2 will be about the middle game and example games of Vienna Gambit declined. And the third game, or the third episode, will be about Vienna game as a whole, such as the Bishop hybrid, as I said, the middle games, and the example games for that as well. And finally, for part 3 of this really ambitious series, is going to be the first episode of part 3 is going to be countering the Vienna Gambit as black. And number 2, the second episode, will be Vienna Gambit Endgame, how to navigate through the endgame within the Vienna Gambit. And the episode 3 of part 3 is going to be the Vienna Game sidelines, like the copycat variation, or the fianchetto variation, or the quote-unquote stonewall variation. The sidelines that, like, how to deal with sidelines when black plays those sidelines. So without further ado, let's just jump right into the Vienna Gambit. So let's take a look at Vienna Gambit. So before looking into Vienna Gambit, what we have here is basically e4, e5, and knight c3. This represents the Vienna game. Vienna Gambit is when opponent plays knight f6 and you play the move f4. After f4, the black's main move is going to be d5, but let me show you what will happen when black accepts the gambit on f4. So after pawn takes a4, what we're going to play is e5, pushing this knight back to its square, because if it advances anywhere else, it's going to get captured for free. So it has to go back, and what this does is it opens up this nasty diagonal for black. So what we're going to do here is play knight f3, just preventing this move and developing our knight at the same time. So it's very useful. And after developing, there's lots of different ways that black can play, but the most played move is d6, immediately trying to target this pawn over here. But you're not going to panic, and you're going to reinforce the center here. And if takes, we're just going to calmly play the move queen e2, pinning this pawn against the king, so he can't capture back. So a lot of times, it is very natural for black to play the move knight c6, but I recommend here to retake the pawn here and develop the bishop at the same time. And because this is pinned and it's a pain in the butt, black will usually play bishop e7. And if that happens, just pawn takes e5 would result in a slightly advantageous position for white. As you can see here, the knight's development path is pretty bad, so it's gonna have a hard time developing. This knight, it can come in here, but after takes, queen f3, the computer evaluates this as plus 1.2 for white. So a very advantageous position. So instead of taking on f4, what black has to do in this position is play d5, immediately striking back in the center. But if this happens, what white is going to do is take on e5, similar to what we did with pushing the pawn on e5 earlier. So black takes on e4. Now it's protected, so you can't just take it. Threatening to take on c3. What we're going to do is we're going to play queen f3, immediately threatening to take on e4. And the main move for black is knight c6. But let me show you what will happen if black takes on c3. If black takes on c3, instead of taking with the d pawn, what we're going to do is take with the b pawn, threatening to create this huge center pawn chain for white. So in order to prevent this, a very good move for black is to play c5, indirectly influencing the center. In this position, the most common mistake for white is to play d4 immediately. However, this is just a completely losing move, because after takes, you're going to be a pawn down, so you have to take back, right? But there's a very nasty move for black, queen h4 check. And what this does is it double attacks the king and the pawn here. And the only way to kind of survive is to play queen f2, but after check, after bishop b4 check, the king is going to be very unsafe. It's going to be very open in this area. So in this case, white will have a very terrible middle game. So d4 should not be played in this position. But instead, what I recommend for you is to play bishop b5 check immediately. Now, what this does, a lot of players will play knight c6. But after knight c6, there's a really brilliant move, an engine-based move, queen g3. Now, queen g3 is a good move because it attacks the pawn on g7, practically tying this bishop to this pawn for a very long time. Now, if black tries to consolidate by playing g6 and trying to fianchetto this pawn over here, what we can do is just have a very normal continuation by playing, let's say, knight f3, and then after playing knight f3, let's say bishop d7, we can play castles, and what we can have is a very scary avenue here for attack. So we looked at what will happen if black decides to block with the knight over here. Let's see what will happen if black defends with the bishop. What we're going to do is we're just going to take, and if takes with the queen, we're just going to strike in the center with d4. This time it works to strike in the d4 because there's no queen h4 check. So in this situation, d4 works. A lot of times black can take, but after takes, and if targets, we can just go there. And after this, preparing to castle, castle, castle. This should be a roughly an equal position. And if knight takes d7, we're just going to take the free pawn. And there's no discoveries here. There's no good discoveries. So we're just going to enjoy a free pawn up. Now let us see what will happen if black plays the best move, knight c6. Now it is worth noting that taking on e4 is a pretty bad move because of the move knight to d4. Knight d4, what it does is it threatens a fork on c2, and also it is attacking the queen on f3. So the best move for white here is to move to c3, move the queen to c3, but black is just going to retake the knight over here, and black has a much sounder position in this case. In order to avoid this, what white does is play bishop b5, pinning the knight to the king, and now we're threatening to take on e4. So what black does is it takes on c3, and what we're going to do is we're going to take with the d pawn, and after that, black's main move is going to give a check on h4 on this diagonal, and what we're going to do is we're going to block with the g pawn, and after that, black plays queen e4 check, and after a queen trade, the black has a very powerful pawn on the e4 square. But as a compensation, what we're going to do is we're going to take on c6 and double the pawn here. So in the future, this doubled pawns will be a weakness for black. And also e4, although it's strong at this very moment, in the future, it could be a potential target as well. So it is worth keeping those in mind. And I will be going over the endgame for this on episode 7 of the series. So make sure to hit the like button and the subscribe button so that you'll be able to see the future videos as well. Well, that does it for this episode of the Vienna Game guide series, I guess. Next week, I'll be uploading about the Vienna Gambit declined. Just to give you a short overview on what that is, it's going to be d6 in this position instead of d5 or f takes. It's also a very common move. So please hit the subscribe and hit the bell button maybe to keep updated on that. I hope you guys have a very good day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.